What is up, you guys, and welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, Drew Hoover, and today we're going to be talking about our playoff predictions. I'm going to split the AFC and the NFC. This segment will be about the AFC, who gets the number one seed, who sneaks in the wild card. Should be tons of fun. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please click that subscribe button. Also, if you have any graphic design needs, Anthony Garcia is your man. His link is in the description below, www.anthonygarciadesign.com. And without further ado, let's get right into this. And with the number one seed, and this team I predict to have a 13-4 record, the Kansas City Chiefs. And I know that this is going to be controversial, but, you know, I know the offense hasn't lived up there. I know Patrick Mahomes has had his ups and downs. But really what sells me is how good this defense has done the second half of the season. In the beginning, they were averaging over 30 points a game to opponents like the Ravens and the Chargers. And now through week 15, they have allowed only 20.6 points a game, which is a huge deal. And when you look at the remaining schedule, they'll face the Chargers on Thursday Night Football. Then they'll have the Steelers, the Bengals, and then finish off with the Denver Broncos. I think they can win all those games, and so I have the Kansas City Chiefs winning that first seed. So then you're asking yourself, what happened to the Patriots? And with the second seed at 12-5, you have the New England Patriots. And the reason that is because, well, first of all, let me explain. I think New England's been doing an incredible job. You know, when everyone thought they were out, they started having this winning streak. Mac Jones has done incredibly well. I stand by my statement in preseason when I said that these wide receivers, you know, weren't that good. And, you know, I feel like they still need an upgraded receiver, but Mac Jones is far mature beyond his years that he's making these wide receivers like Kendrick Bourne, Nelson Aguilar, Jacoby Myers look good. And obviously they can establish the run. Bill Belichick did an incredible job setting that defense up this past offseason, getting guys like Matthew Judon. He's been a superstar, and that secondary holding its own even without Stephon Gilmore. So when I look at their schedule, I think they can win all those games. They can win against Indianapolis and the Buffalo Bills, and obviously Jacksonville. It's the Miami Dolphins game that's gotten me, honestly. The fact that they beat them earlier in the year, I know they were just starting out, but they'll have Tua Tagovailoa back, and Miami Dolphins are also having a little streak of their own, so we'll see what happens at the end. Plus, there's always a few surprisers at the last week of the season. With the third seed, with a also 12-5 record, you have the Tennessee Titans. And, man, this team has had no luck this year. You know, losing Derrick Henry, losing A.J. Brown, and the fact that even Julio Jones really hasn't lived up to the hype as well. And, you know, man, people really wanted them to take that next step. There's a lot of teams this year that we'll talk about eventually that really could have taken that next step, and Tennessee was one of them. They went to the AFC Championship game. You know, they beat, you know, they were supposed to, you know, go to the championship technically last year, but they got upset by the Ravens in the Wildcard last year. And what really has set this team apart is that defense. Similar to the Kansas City Chiefs, they started out the same way, you know, allowing a bunch of big points, but now as the season gone on, the defense got better, particularly in the front seven. Guys like Jeffrey Simmons and Harold Landry have stepped up. I know they didn't get the production they wanted from Bud Dupree, their free agent signing, but yeah, there's a lot of players that have stepped up, and honestly, this defense is what's going to carry Titans wherever they go in the playoffs. And with the fourth seed, that means we haven't talked about the AFC North yet, and this is the toughest one I've had to decide because you currently have the Baltimore Ravens at 8-5, and Lamar Jackson just suffered an ankle injury, and they also suffered a loss against the Cleveland Browns. Which is, speaking of the Cleveland Browns, as of today, Kevin Stephani and Baker Mayfield both apparently tested positive for COVID. And especially with Baker Mayfield, if he doesn't get 2 negative tests, he's not going to play against the Las Vegas Raiders. And then you have the Bengals, who their offense really did take, to the next level with Jamar Chase and stuff. And Joe Burrow really showed his stride. And what really impressed me was, again, defensively, Trey Hendrickson, the free agent signing, turned out really well. You talk about the secondary, which is honestly a collection of a bunch of guys that were good, but apparently weren't good enough for everybody else. So that you had pretty much a group in the secondary that was pretty much had a chip on their shoulders, and they've done way better than people gave them credit for leading up to the season. But unfortunately, that offensive line still is causing troubles for Joe Burrow. We saw that with the Chicago Bears earlier in the season. We've seen that just recently with the loss to the 49ers. So we'll see what happens here on out. It might cost in the playoffs, it might not. So who's going to win that AFC North title? Who's going to get that 4th seed? And I have come to the hard decision. And again, this is going to be controversial. With the 4th seed at 9-8, Cleveland Browns are going to win the AFC North. And again, this is a hard decision, especially after today's events. But like I said, I just can't overlook, like I said, Lamar Jackson's absence. And even if he does come back, he wasn't doing really well before the injury to begin with. And also, like I said, the offensive line with the Bengals isn't too big of a concern. And honestly, it all comes down to the season finale. The Cincinnati Bengals fly down to Cleveland, or I should say up to Cleveland. I didn't really do well in geography. And they're going to go to Cleveland to decide who's going to win the AFC North. I think that's what it's all coming down to. And I think Cleveland's going to pull it off in the end. And so now we got our division winners. Who's going to come in as a wildcard team? With the number 5th seed at 10-7, we got the Buffalo Bills. And, like I said, I know a bunch of people that are Buffalo Bills fans. One of my roommates in college was a Buffalo Bills fan. And this was a trying season when you consider that these fans really believed they had what they called a 5-year window to get to the Super Bowl. And when you look at a season like they've had this year, I think all that is in question to see how small that window really is. Josh Allen's still good. They still got good weapons, but they got no running game. And also that defense, it was doing pretty well up to that point, It still holds ground, They, held the Patriots to 14 points, but the Buffalo Bills only scored 10. And despite what we experienced with the Buccaneers, man, that's a tough offense to defend against when you got all these different weapons. So I don't put that against them, really. But I think the Buffalo Bills, I don't want to see them miss the playoffs. I really want to see what they do once they get there. And maybe we'll see a little bit of the Buffalo Bills that we saw last year. And, maybe we'll see Chiefs and the Bills rematch sometime. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But then we have the 6th seed, the 2nd wildcard team, who also will go 10-7, and that is the Los Angeles Chargers. And man, what a year for Justin Herbert. And to me, year after year, he is setting himself apart more from Joe Burrow. He is the more composed and confident quarterback of the two. Austin Eckler really stepped it up this year. I questioned the Chargers' decision to make him the starting running back last year, but now that he's healthy, he has really proven himself. You got Keenan Allen, Mike Williams. That defense has really stepped up this year. Watch out for the Chargers to make a big splash in the NFL playoffs. So now we're down to the 7th seed, and with a 9-8 record, the Indianapolis Colts just barely sneak in. And we really need a team like the Colts to make things interesting. We talk about them facing the Patriots this week. Man, I think it's going to be an interesting one right there. And, they got some tough competition coming up, They'll face Arizona after that, which even without the departure, without DeAndre Hopkins, they still got Christian Kirk and Rondell Moore. But they'll end the season pretty favorably. I think they can win against the Raiders, and I think they can win against the Jaguars to get into the playoffs. And so let us recap, and I'm going to show you a picture of what the AFC picture is going to look like. And you got the New England Patriots facing off against the Indianapolis Colts yet again. And again, a lot of what we see this weekend will maybe shape what we see in the Wildcard game. Then you got Tennessee and the Chargers. I'm loving that. We'll see how that defense fares against that strong offensive line of the Los Angeles Chargers. I think the Chargers could really show up in that game. And then you got the Browns and the Buffalo Bills, two teams that really had the highest expectations in the AFC, haven't quite lived up to them yet. And to really, I think both those teams have a lot to prove. So I think that's going to be a stronger matchup than people realize. So that has been the playoff picture for the AFC conference. And that means we'll be talking about the NFC. I wanted to get this out before Thursday Night Football again. That's the struggle with me making these videos. But hopefully this is getting out before Thursday Night Football, before the Chiefs face off against the Chargers, which should be a good game. And hopefully I can get that NFC playoff picture out to get my predictions there. Who's going to be the number one seed when you have the Packers, Buccaneers, and the Cardinals all at 10-3 at this moment? Who's going to get that last seed? That last seed is interesting when you consider all the teams that could possibly end up there. So this has been Drew signing off, and have a good day, everybody.